Welcome back to church time.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pandemic Preaching. Still doing videos each week. Glad you guys are watching. Hopefully you're watching. Hopefully you're staying connected with each other. I know that I get an opportunity to talk to a few of you every now and then, and I try my best to keep up with most of you and what you're doing. I know we're not doing a whole lot right now, but I do think that we will be together soon. I know I say that a lot, but keep praying, stay faithful. We're gonna be back in the worship center in the student building and doing our activities on Wednesday nights as quick as we can. Okay, so stay tuned. As soon as they give us the go ahead, we will be back. So tonight I wanted to talk for a few minutes. I know that last week, if you were here, if you watched the video, we talked about the story of the prodigal son, and we focused on the younger son who thought that his inheritance was his to have right at that moment. He wanted it. He didn't want to wait. He told his father, "Give me what is mine." He left away into a foreign land, squandered it, the Bible said. Tonight, I want us to focus on a little bit different aspect of that story that we might have missed before. But the first thing I want to ask you is: Have you ever had expectations in your life about certain situations that didn't go your way? Have you ever had unmet expectations? Something you're really excited about, and it just doesn't deliver like you think it should. Think about, in particular, a movie that you've been waiting to see for a while, that you've heard great things about, that you've been excited about, and then you go watch it and it's just a dud. Like, it's just not very good, right? And it kind of takes the wind out of yourselves. Think about a sporting event you've been waiting for. Your team's playing, you got tickets, you go, they lose. Again, just unmet expectations. I can think about, for me personally, I always think about the expectations of going on my family vacation every year, which we always go to the beach. And I think about, just a nice, relaxing time. Well, I'm stubborn, and I don't listen sometimes. So when my mom tells me, "Hey, make sure you pack your sunscreen," and I go, "I don't need that. I will not be out in the sun that much." And then what happens? The very first day we get there, I'm completely sunburned. I'm like a boiled lobster, and the rest of my entire week I can't even go out to the beach because I'm so sunburned. That's a piece of wisdom, by the way. Don't ever get sunburned on your first day. Wait until the last day if you're going to get sunburned, because it will ruin your entire trip. But anyway, have you ever thought about things, even maybe in your personal life or your situation at school with your friends and your social circles, at home with your parents? Think about unmet expectations with a sibling. You think that they deserve a punishment for something they did that they didn't get. You had a friend that you thought was a really good friend, and then you find out they've been talking about you. Unmet expectations are everywhere. And I think in our relationship with the Lord, if we're being honest with ourselves, we have unmet expectations in our spiritual life. And so tonight, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the older brother instead of just the focal point of this story, who is the younger brother and the father. We're going to look at the older brother and see how unmet expectations can affect us in our spiritual life. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke 15, chapter 11. I'm going to read this again because even though we studied it last week, I want us to have it fresh in our minds so that we can understand what's going on. So it says in verse 11, it says, "There was a man who had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me.' And he divided this property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but here I sit perishing with hunger? I will arise and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe, and put it on him, and a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, and kill it, and let us eat, and let us celebrate. For this is my son, who was dead and is alive again. He was lost, and now is found. And they began to celebrate. Now here's where it gets to the older son. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, Look at these many years I have served you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you never even gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came home, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and now is found. So, the first point I want you to write down if you're taking notes that we see here is that the older son, asked a question with ulterior motives. We see this in verse 25. It says, Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. So picture the scene for just a second. The older son had been working and working and working. He was a hard worker, apparently. And he worked. Let's just put yourself in his position for a second. Let's say you're out working and you're doing a hard labor. You're out in the fields and you come home late one night. You roll up to the house and you see the biggest party you've ever seen in your life going on. Right? How would you feel if you knew that party was for somebody who was not a hard worker, somebody that had done the opposite of what you expected them to do, and then everybody's partying while you're out working? If it were me, I'd be mad. Just being honest, I'd feel left out. But I try to put on a good face to indicate nothing was wrong, because that's what we do, right? We hide our emotions by acting like everything's okay, but on the inside we're furious, right? And I think this is how the older son may be feeling here. I don't think his question that he asked the servant is necessarily very kind or very lighthearted or light mood. It has a very light mood, like, what's going on here? I think it's more aggressive, like, what is going on, right? So he should think, if it were me, I would think this party's for me, right? Because I'm the hard worker. I've been working so hard. Finally, my father has recognized this, and he's throwing me a party, right? That would be the expectations that I would have in this scenario based on what the Bible tells us about this particular story. So he asked the servant a question with ulterior motives. A question that doesn't seem like the real question when you think about that word ulterior motive, or those words. We hear those a lot, we just don't recognize them. Think about how, let's just give you some examples. Your dad walks in and says, Hey, how was math today? When deep down he means, what's the deal with your math grade? Why is your math grade so bad? When are you going to improve it? Or your mom walks in and she says, Hey, what's on your schedule for Friday night? What are you doing Friday night? Like, that's one of the questions that we get. I don't know if it's you, but if for sure when somebody says, Hey, what are you doing so-and-so day? And you're just like, I don't know yet. What do you need? Like, what is it? Do I need to be doing something? Right? But when your mom walks in and says, Hey, what are you doing Friday night? When you know she really means when she's about to ask, Hey, will you stay home to babysit? Right? Your little brother, your little sister. Or a friend asks, what do you think about this guy or this girl? When what they really mean is, do you think they're cute? And then all of these particular questions lead to another question or an ulterior motive, that there's something that you're trying to get out of you that's masked in a different type of question. And so what he's doing here, he already knows the answer to this question, I believe. And so ulterior motives, having conversations where you ask questions that lead to another question, or try to fish for information that actually lead to what you're wanting to know, is a bit it's a bit deceptive. It's hiding a bit of ourselves without even realizing it. It's setting the relationship up for failure. So the first thing we need to recognize about the older son is that the older son asked a question with ulterior motives. The second thing to notice here is the problem that with looking for fault in others is that you become unhappy, stressed, and frustrated. When you look for a fault or something wrong with a certain situation, it immediately makes you unhappy, stressed, and frustrated. Because you're going to, in your own mind, in reality, create a situation where there is no winning for you. Because you're looking for something to be upset about. You're looking for something to be angry about. Look at verse 28. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, listen to this. All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never even gave me one young goat for a feast with me and my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back at home after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. He's angry. He's very angry. And I don't even think the verbiage here can properly describe how angry he actually is. But a lot of people miss this. Did you see what happened here? The older son didn't even call his brother. Instead, he told his dad, this son of yours, as if to cut off the relationship, this son of yours. The older son was angry. He even said his dad never gave him even a young goat for a feast. And they've killed their prized calf for a son who didn't deserve it. Now, I don't know about you, but I tend to think this father has given his son something, right? He's got to at least give him something. He's a hard worker. I'm sure his dad recognizes that, but maybe not in the way that he wants. But in this moment, the older son is so angry, he's not even thinking straight. So the problem with looking for faults in others, and I'm sure he saw faults obviously in his brother, but also in his father, is that he became unhappy, stressed, and frustrated because he didn't understand. His expectations were unmet. We often play this comparison game. A lot of times, we all do it. We take note of what people wear, how athletic they are, how smart they are, what they look like, and then we scheme up things and try to find out how we can be better than them. We call out their faults, even if in our own minds, and we're not doing it to them. We act like, yeah, we're being kind by not insulting somebody by calling out their faults. But what are we doing in our own mind to that relationship when we do those things? In doing this, we think we'll be happier, but we're not. Finding faults in others actually leaves us unhappy. It leaves us stressed. And if we're being honest, we get frustrated way too much because of this. Because we know it doesn't work. We just keep doing it anyway. The older son was very unhappy, very stressed, very frustrated in this moment because all he was doing was focusing on the faults of his brother and the faults of his father. And then the third thing we recognize about this story is that God is faithful even when we are angry or frustrated. We see in verse 31, his father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything that I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. Look, dear son, you've always stayed by me. Everything I have is yours. So the father is pleading for his son to see the bigger picture. There is something way bigger going on here than just what seems like is happening on the surface. The son left, squandered his money, came back home, and then received everything. There's a bigger picture going on here. Yes, there's a party for the younger son, but everything the father has is the older son's. The father did not respond to the son's disrespect, right? Because it is kind of disrespectful to say those things to your father, especially back then, when his father was employing him. But his father could have easily responded and said, well, if you're going to act that way about it, you won't have anything. I won't give anything. How many of you ever heard that? Like, if you're going to act that way, you're not going to get it. That's fine. You're not going to get anything. The father remained faithful to the older son. The father knew that the older son was frustrated. He knew that he was angry. And I believe without a shadow of a doubt that God can knows our frustrations. He knows we're angry before we even get to that place. And we could be angry with him, but guess what? God is going to remain faithful to us even when we are frustrated and we are angry at him. And so the last point is God is faithful to those who are faithful to him. Here's the deal. There's a difference between values and rules. Values establish the things that we care about. Rules establish what we're told to care about, okay? Think about a time in your life when you had an opportunity to do something wrong, okay? Even though it was part of the rules, or maybe it wasn't necessarily breaking the rules or breaking the law. You had an opportunity to do something that didn't break the rules, but it did break your values. Something that you just didn't feel right about doing. And oftentimes you can fake your values for a specific time, but when it comes down to it, the things that you care about will truly be exposed. The things that you care about will eventually come out. For the older son here, he worked hard, and he looked like he was being faithful to his work. And he might have had some ulterior motives going on in his head, but he wanted to have that connection with his father where he was proud of him, where he looked like somebody who deserved an inheritance, right? And really all it was about was getting rewarded. It was selfish. And when he didn't get his way, this is us a lot. This is a lot of us. When he didn't get his way, he snapped. He threw a fit, right? And his true values were exposed. In order to experience life change, some of your rules need to become values. It's not necessarily you're doing things because you're told to do them. It's you're doing things because you value the result that you get by doing them. Okay? We do a lot of things in our Christian life because we're told to, right? We go to church because we're told to sometimes as kids. But our rules need to become our values. After hearing about the older son, some of us can identify with this character, and I challenge you to take this step. Think about the things that he did in the course of this story. Once he found out that his brother was home, he found out that the father had killed the fattened calf. Think about how the actions that he took and how much they can relate to us in our lives. Maybe you need to stop asking questions with ulterior motives and always trying to get your way or always trying to manipulate a situation. You could replace ulterior motives or ulterior questions with genuine questions, and maybe, just maybe, your relationships with other people will start to become genuine. Perhaps the questions that the ones that you were asking before to get to know a person, actually could bring you closer to knowing that person if you just ask them the right way. Maybe you need to stop looking for faults in other people. Maybe you need to stop looking for the things that other people do wrong to make yourself feel better. You've been viewing your friends as competition instead of who they really are, which should be friends. Doing this has left you unhappy and stressed and frustrated, just like it does with the prodigal son. What would it look like to take a step back and stop looking for faults in people and instead celebrate what is good about somebody? What would it mean to take a step back and instead of pointing out the faults in somebody, the faults in their lives, the things that they struggle with, the things that they don't do right, especially if they're your friends, and celebrating what's good about them? That's a step you could take. What would that look like? What would that change about your relationship with him or you as a person? Maybe you need to take a step by remembering that God is faithful when we are angry or frustrated. If the Bible promises us that God is faithful even when we are not, then I believe we can believe that particular notion about God and trust in that and live like that. It seems like everyone else in your life sometimes is getting everything. And you're just left out in the field by yourself. You look at, there's so many ways that you can compare yourself to culture, and there's going to be times in your life when you just feel like you got left out in the field. but it may not be the case. I was thinking about this the other day. You think about comparison, okay? We talk about this a lot. We use that word comparison a lot. We compare ourselves to people who always have more than us, who always have better and nicer things than us, who have more money than us. But we rarely often compare ourselves to people who have less than us. Why is that? Because if you think about it, no matter who you compare yourself to that has more than you, if you compare yourself to the people who don't have as much as you, it kind of balances out that humility in your life where you realize, okay, I don't have this, but I also don't have this. God has blessed me with this, but I know that these people struggle more than I do. And maybe I should spend more time thinking about them and helping them than thinking about what I could have, right? Comparison is oftentimes a thing we think about when it comes to people who have more than us rather than people who have less than us. So we need to remember, lastly and thirdly, that God is faithful even when we are frustrated or angry with Him. And remember that God knows that we're going to be angry before we even get to that point. I don't know what step you need to take. Only you do. And I encourage you to be bold and courageous. Take the step. Know what to do. Think about the story. Read it. Focus on the actions of the different characters in the story. Next week, we're going to focus on a different aspect of the story. But think about how we can the point of the parables is to kind of give us an idea of what we do in our own lives and how we can take some of the positive wisdom out of these stories and apply them to us. That's why Jesus told them to the people that He was talking to, because He knew that there would be somebody in that story or a particular aspect of that story that would relate to a person sitting in the crowd that was listening to Him speak. And sometimes it was directed right at somebody, and there was no way that they could miss the story here. And so, or the point of the story. And so here, the prodigal son, the focus is always usually on the younger son and the father, and the father's reaction to the son coming home. And how last week we talked about how no matter what mistakes we've made, no matter what we've done, God is always welcoming us back with open arms. But this week, we're focusing on the reaction of somebody who should be happy that his brother has returned home. And instead, he's angry, he's frustrated because his brother ran off and did things that he shouldn't have done, squandered his father's money, and now is being celebrated just because he came home. And so, think about the particular actions of the older brother here. Think about how we can apply those to our lives. The things that we discussed tonight, the 3 points, and think about if take a real hard look at our lives and see if we are the type of people who look for fault in others. See if we compare ourselves to other people. See if we ask questions with ulterior motives, which is deceptive. Think about if we are those types of people and how we can do those things better and be better as Christians, and how if we can just see the value in the things that God values, see the things that Christians value. If we value those things instead of just following a set of rules, we actually can create better relationships with people in our lives instead of the things that we read here and the things that we just discussed tonight. So think about those things. Meditate on this particular story. Read it if you have to. Read it every other day. Read it over and over again, because God's word is continually speaking to us, even through the same stories. So keep reading, keep the faith. If you have any questions about anything, please contact us. You can DM our Instagram page. You can text me, whatever you want to do. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.